It is a quiet lifestyle, which is very rewarding. A lifestyle which someday can be passed on to the next generation of young ranchers and dairy owners. But you don't hear much from the everyday rancher or dairyman about what's going on in their world.
Livestock theft has been present and has always been a problem for ranchers. When we have threats to our industry, such as rustling, obviously it's a big deal for us.
1,750 head approximately that were reported stolen. That would be on today's market about $2.6 million worth of cattle.
The consequences that they suffer has got to be greater to deter them.
The penalties for stealing cattle are really quite small, and I think because of the small penalties, law enforcement and the judicial system thinks it's a crime from the previous century.
We need to use every tool we have, whether it's our tools within the brand department, the tools of the sheriffs and police, and the tools of the DAs to get these people prosecuted.
Organizations work together to investigate these thefts and have established many helpful tools to help ranchers and dairy owners throughout the process of investigation and prosecution.
So these cases are very important to the community and to the industry.
Ranching's basically just a way of life, and it's something that it's been in my family for generations, and obviously I'm raising my children in the same environment, and so it's something that we want to be able to pass on. And so when we have threats to our industry, such as rustling, obviously it's a big deal for us.
Cattle ranches and dairies are a $6.4 billion industry in California. California became a state in 1850, which brought many social and business opportunities. But as commerce moved westward, so did the perpetrators of cattle rustling. Although the pioneers of old have become part of our rich history, cattle rustling has remained all too real.
The theft part of things is becoming a bigger and bigger problem. I wish I knew how we could deter it.
Livestock theft has been present and has always been a problem for ranchers. It's sort of been exacerbated over the last, I would say, few years, largely based on the fact that the value of livestock has increased exponentially.
This has been a big problem, and it's getting bigger and will continue to be bigger into the future, because right now we're in a period of time where cattle prices are way up, and so for thieves, they've got an opportunity that they perceive that they'll sure take advantage of it, and so we do need to be vigilant on the farms and on the ranches.
There are 32 counties in California where beef cattle and dairy cows are raised, but you don't hear much from the everyday rancher or dairyman about what's going on in their world. Cattle ranches and dairies are typically family-run businesses, handed down from generation to generation. Having a successful business takes years to establish and a daily effort to maintain. A business that proves family bloodlines run deep.
Every other dairy farm in the state is a family-owned business, and some of these businesses have been in place since California became a state.
The family's done this for many generations. It's a business, but it's also a bit of a lifestyle. I feel like that this type of business and this type of involvement makes better people?
It was part of the family business.
Well, I grew up in the livestock business. My father was a state veterinarian.
So in 1979, we got involved in this particular cattle operation, and we've been there ever since.
Like I say, I was born and raised in it. It's all I kind of ever really wanted to do. I guess I'm lucky enough to say that I can do something that I love and look forward to getting up every morning and doing it.
Well, my dad was a farmer and raised cattle, and he sort of always enjoyed that, and I think he passed that on to me because I've always enjoyed it, and it's just something that's sort of in my blood.
A rancher typically starts as early as 4 a.m. in the morning with herding livestock in for medical evaluation, feeding, or the branding of new calves for identification. Cowboys and ranch hands may evaluate over 160 or more calves just that day alone. The average cost to raise a calf varies depending on the end result or product in the marketplace. It ranges between $700 to $900 a head to raise and feed a calf, which will sell at market somewhere between $1,400 and $2,000 a head in a good year.
Well, probably raising an animal to a heifer is around $1,400, but when you think of the loss of milk production, what if the animal was pregnant? You also lost a calf and a large animal, but all the milk production you lose.
Right now, the cattle market's the highest it's ever been. 500-pound cattle are bringing, $2.50 a pound. You're talking, a 500-pounder is worth, $1,400.
Bull calf would probably bring between $350 to $500, and that's a drop calf. I mean, it's an extraordinary price. A mother cow right now is probably bringing about $1 a pound at the sales yard. So if you figure she's going to be 1,800 pounds, $1,800 is what she's going to bring.
In 2012, we were short 46 head. At that point in time, the value of those was probably $800 a head. And then again in 2014, we were short 27 head. Their value is probably at $1,500 a head. That's how much the markets rose in the last 2 years.
Within the last 5 years, we've had as many as 1,750 head approximately that were reported stolen. That would be on today's market about $2.6 million worth of cattle.
10 head of cattle, you're looking at approximately $15,000 to $20,000 loss for year-old steers. That type of loss can't be made up in short periods of time, and it's great losses and continued losses, then the family goes out of business.
The loss of 10 calves will have a large impact on their ability to break even and potentially make a very small amount of profit at the end of the year. So it's very important that those issues are considered, and that's why for us it's such a serious crime.
Many times it's could be an ex-employee, it could be a neighbor, it could be a friend of an ex-employee, but it's someone that has an understanding of how that ranch operates, when the owners are there, when they're not. They understand the schedule of that ranch and take advantage of that.
Not only does rustling add a huge cost to raising a herd, but the crime itself may be horrific and inhumane. Sometimes the theft is of just one lone cow who's wandered too far from the herd, then is butchered by a chainsaw at the side of a quiet country road. The crime may also be sophisticated, committed by someone with access to a stock transport who knows how to guide and load animals weighing up to 2,000 pounds. In either case, the personal investment and loss is shocking.
Maybe action around in the evenings or at night. Places where, say you see cattle trucks or trailers moving around in the middle of the night. There's a reason. I mean, that shouldn't really be happening.
Yes, I had a herdsman that was handling all the records. I totally trusted him, and when I was out of town for meetings or whatever, he just loaded them up, and I don't know where he took them all. They found about 40, but when we got them back, they had to be all culled.
Margot was in a very tough situation, and she had people that she trusted on her place who'd been with her for a period of time, and they took advantage of that trust, and that was tragic because there were probably up to 100 calves that were stolen from her place.
It impacted, my herdsmen and all my employees too, because we had somebody there who was dishonest.
not being able to have control over their existence makes me feel really sad. I just feel badly for them that we're not able to take care of them. And so there's an emotional connection to our cattle that you really feel responsible for taking care of them, and you need to feel like you've let them down just a little bit.
When losses happen, most ranchers and dairy owners look to their professional industry organizations for guidance in tough times.
The California Cattlemen's Association is a relatively old statewide trade association. It was formed in 1917 during the First World War when ranchers here in California felt that they needed to have a voice in what the government was doing with agricultural and food policy in Washington in response to the war effort. And so since then, this association has been the premier representative of the California's beef cattle industry and ranchers and beef producers in the state.
Well, the Bureau of Livestock ID, the main purpose is to protect the California cattle industry from losses of theft and straying. And we do that primarily through the brand inspection program.
Once we realize they're missing, we turn it into the brand department. They will file a missing cattle report. They have a livestock investigator. They usually come out and write the report. They'll do a little investigation around, try to see if they can come up with any leads.
A brand inspector is our eyes and ears on the ground. They inspect all cattle for at changes of ownership and at movements out of state. So they're the guys there's 50 brand inspectors throughout the state that do those inspections.
My job at the sale yard here is to inspect the cattle as they come in for proof of ownership, to see if the brands that are on them belong to the people that are bringing them in, or if they have the backup papers to sell them. If not, then we have to try and create a paper trail where they come from. And if we can't do it, we return the animals to the people that properly own them.
These organizations work together to investigate these thefts and have established many helpful tools to help ranchers and dairy owners throughout the process of investigation and prosecution.
It's providing them with just even simple tools that help them. For instance, CCA provides our members no trespassing signs, which are very important, and our members display these. It provides the penal code section. It provides them with an opportunity to post these around their ranches to ensure that individuals who may be seeking to go in thinking it's public access, to know that it's marked as private property. We also, one of the things that we do make sure that we provide our members is information regarding trespass, arrest, things that from a law enforcement standpoint they should know, even providing them with booklets such as this that very in detail outlines the laws and regulations associated with arrest and trespass here in the state. The Cattlemen's Association actually also works directly with the Bureau of Livestock ID to provide a reward for anybody that's willing to offer up information that leads to a conviction in livestock theft.
Well, the California Cattlemen's Association has a hotline number that they can call, and that number is 800-671-4327. With that hotline program, they have a reward program that's offered. So you can actually get a reward, and the Bureau of Livestock Identification determines the amount of that reward fund that is offered.
Be vigilant. Watch for folks coming on your place. If they're coming on your place and they don't have your permission, they shouldn't be there at all. If they refuse to leave after you first confront them, once again, call law enforcement. Let law enforcement handle it.
Committing the best resources and the appropriate resources to these investigations. They're very important to our county. They're very important to the individuals who are victims of these crimes.
We assist those ranchers through first of all, through our inspection program. That's basically the paper trail that the cattlemen can use and we can use to follow where those cattle have been moving and how they've sold. We also do that by assisting them in training.
Yeah, so over the years, we've received training from the CDFA, their livestock investigators and brand inspectors.
Oh, they were excellent. They came right away. They started investigating. They looked at all the records. They went around the whole area, surrounding areas to find the animals.
In addition to the helpful tools these organizations provide, ranchers and dairy owners can help themselves to deter cattle rustling on their property.
Branding is a really good tool to use, but perhaps we may have to look at other options.
Branding. They right now they brand them 4 or 5 hours after they're born. before they go to the calf ranch.
But we're seeing a little bit of an increase right now in branding of dairy cattle, where in the past that may not have been done. And I think one of the reasons folks are doing that is, once again, to thwart theft.
Branding is not only tradition, but it's also a deterrence for livestock theft.
Our cattle are legally identified with a hot iron. That's the legal brand in California.
But despite all these tools available for ranchers and dairy owners, one might wonder why these thieves are still attempting to steal cattle.
The penalties that we have in place today aren't adequate to make sure that these folks don't stop doing it. And that's really what we need to focus on, and probably spend some more time working with the legislature.
Yeah, the penalties for stealing cattle are really quite small, and I think because of the small penalties, law enforcement and the judicial system kind of thinks it's a crime from the previous century.
The consequences that they suffer has got to be greater to deter them.
I would definitely like to see a stricter punishment for rustling. I think it's a huge deal, and obviously, you know, that's my business. Of course, I'm interested in it, and I don't do it, so therefore I would like the punishment to be severe.
Currently, California Cattlemen's Association is sponsoring AB 1722, again by Assemblymember Frank Bigelow, who was the author of previous legislation, AB 924. And that legislation, again, helps to strengthen deterrence for and punishment for those that have been convicted of livestock theft.
In the Old West, the theft of cattle was taken seriously by both the law and vigilantes, each equally dealing out the punishment, which was often death by hanging. Over the years, California's laws have become a bit more forgiving and, of course, more complex. California Penal Code Section 487A says that anyone who feloniously steals, takes, carries, leads, or drives away a bovine animal, which is the personal property of another, is guilty of grand theft. Section 487G of the California Penal Code says that in order to successfully convict a cattle thief under 487G, the prosecution must, in addition to proving the theft, also prove that the thief had the specific intent to take the animal for the purpose of sale, medical research, slaughter, or other commercial use as the ultimate goal of the crime. While 487A requires only that there is a theft of the animal, sentencing is controlled by the principles of California's new realignment scheme. This means the thief will not typically go to prison and will generally serve much less incarceration time. Section 487G, on the other hand, is not covered by realignment, and the thief can receive up to 3 years in state prison for the theft of one animal.
What we really certainly would suggest is that ranchers work directly, and even include CCA in this, ranchers work directly with their local district attorney's office to make them aware of the impact livestock theft is having on their local economy, as well as their own personal pocketbooks, that we continue to not forget that this is a crime that was not 150 years ago. This is a crime that still exists.
Due to the price of cattle increasing as much as it has recently, and it's going to stay in this realm, I think, for quite a while, that people are going to be, we're really going to run into a lot of stolen cattle in the near future, and we need to use every tool we have, whether it's our tools within the brand department, the tools of the sheriffs and police, and the tools of the DAs, to get these people prosecuted and make sure that it doesn't get out of hand.
Cattle rustling is a challenge to prosecute. It is important that prosecutors continue to file cases that are case-worthy to create strong examples. Bad facts make bad law and weak foundation for future prosecutions. Things like police reports, investigations by the Bureau of Livestock Identification, cooperation of witnesses, and just plain old facts of the case. Finding ways to establish trust and communication within the community is key. Prosecutors have the unique position in our state of wearing the big white hat, which means that they must prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. Those standards are often difficult to achieve.
The first case that comes to mind is the case against Gary Baumer. This is an individual who was involved in the livestock and horse industry for quite a few years. He ended up with several of his neighbors' cattle, some of which he kept and butchered, and some of which he moved to another pasture some distance away. One of the same neighbor discovered that Baumer's brand was on one of his animals and reported it. So the California Department of Livestock, Food and Agriculture and Livestock Investigation investigated it. They confronted Baumer. He basically admitted what he'd done. We ended up prosecuting him for grand theft of livestock. He pled guilty to a misdemeanor. He received summary probation, appropriate fines and fees. He paid $8,000 in restitution to both the neighbor and another individual who'd had cattle on the neighbor's property at that time that Baumer had actually made off with also.
An important case in my time was a multi-defendant case that spanned, I believe, 4 or 5 separate counties. Tehama was one of them. There were 2 guys working together. As the sheriff mentioned, a lot of their activity was at night. They would pull up with a stock trailer and load cows and or horses. They really didn't care what they grabbed, but they would grab what they could. And they also stole tack from horse events and also from a big sale we have up here called the Bull and Gilding Sale. So eventually they were caught. And at that time, I thought it was important for our prosecution to go last so that we could ensure that these individuals went to prison. We have a very conservative-minded group of people up here. Our judges also take theft very seriously, especially agriculture-related theft. So it ended up with a good result. They were prosecuted in multiple counties. They were here last, and we did send them to prison. So that's the kind of message we'd like to send to people who believe that it may be an easy way to make a buck.
Seeing families and businesses find justice for what has been done is the most rewarding part of their job. Prosecutors and law enforcement work endlessly to solve these cases. And in the end, when they prevail, it is the fuel and passion that drives them to prove the next case.
These are generational operations we're talking about. These farms and ranches have been in business for multiple generations. This is how they support themselves, how they put food on their table. And so it's very important that these cases are prosecuted, that the criminals are brought to justice, and that the victims are made whole through restitution or having their animals returned. The analogy that I make is that a criminal taking someone's livestock is just like taking a carpenter's tools. You're taking away their ability to make money not only now but in the future, and especially in terms of livestock, when a healthy cow can produce for years to come. So the loss of that cow can mean the loss of income for many years down the road, and not only that, but a high replacement cost. So these cases are very important to the community and to the industry.
It is a quiet lifestyle, which is very rewarding. A lifestyle which someday can be passed on to the next generation of young ranchers and dairy owners. Where families grow, cows graze along the beautiful California sunsets, and a strong economy continues to thrive. The California District Attorneys Association, California Cattlemen's Association, the Western United Dairymen Association, and the Bureau of Livestock Identification and other law enforcement agencies are committed to put an end to cattle rustling.